The Midwest, flat. Nebraska, cornfield. Omaha, Warren Buffett. Those were the only things I knew about this part of the world. I didn't plan much for my continental road trip, but the one thing I did plan for was to drive through this monotonous part of the country as quickly as possible to get to Colorado and the Rockies. That was where my adventure was to begin, and crossing this flat piece of land was just like a taxi ride to the airport before an epic trip. But despite planning for this monotony, I still wasn't prepared enough for the hours of driving alone while barely moving the steering wheel.
+1 515 600.
I started to get worried. In fact, I started to get excited by mundane things like a state capitol's dome, a road sign along the interstate, and a truck stop. Well, it is America's largest. It's supposed to be more spectacular when I reach the Rockies, but that's just a taller pile of rocks, right? But won't I have already gotten tired of driving at that point? Did I really need to take 4 months off of work just to do this? To deal with this existential crisis, I put more effort into trying to immerse myself with the local experience. Visit a furniture store, but not any furniture store, Warren Buffett's largest in America furniture store. And finally, discover that Omaha has more than just a tie to Warren Buffett's name. It also has a wealth of culture and history. It has an art gallery that looks like a Mesopotamian fortress. It has an European-style market with cobblestone. It has hosted a world fair with a Greco-Roman palace that reminds me of the Forum. It was the starting point and the center of the first Continental Railroad, with all the glamour and prosperity that came with that position. I soon began to realize this was not the boring Midwest anymore. This used to be the edge of the Wild West, where adventurers enjoyed the last bit of civilization before another 2,000 miles of romanticized chaos. It was the starting point of the Oregon Trail, the Mormon Trail, and the California Trail that brought together between 250,000 people in the mid 1800s to the West Coast. It was the hope of finally making it big with the California gold rush. It was a path to safety from decades of prosecution. It was a trail where 3 to 10% of people died. It was the beginning of territory that's barely owned by any government or governed by any laws. And yet, entire families packed their lifelong belongings in a small horse-drawn carriage. I could feel the angst and excitement from the past, as I was also going to embark on a very similar journey to the West. Except for the fact that I was also cocooned in a car with ample amount of food, warmth, and 320 horsepower instead of 2. To end this surprisingly, culturally eye-opening day, I was surprised yet again by the architecture of the small city of Lincoln, Nebraska. And so, to further the attempt to immerse myself with the spirit of adventure, I finally decided to camp outside for the night, for the first time during the trip. As I sat on the dock, looking over the distant houses and stars, I finally started to feel as if I was part of the trip, rather than simply writing down an itinerary. And just to be consistent with the amount of culture I was exposed to today, I had a cheese board with salmon for dinner, on the hood of my car, with a lawn chair and a tent.